What's up, everyone? Sean Count Blackguard here today with an album review, this time of the 2017 Profound Lore Records release of Mirror Reaper by Bellwitch. And before I get into this review, I just want to mention this album did win the polling over on my Patreon. If you want to have a say in what I review next, check out my Patreon, link will be down below. If you are not familiar with Bellwitch, they are an American-based funeral doom band, two-piece band, and they've been around for quite a few years. They have a demo, and this is their third full-length album. I've been a fan of theirs since their debut, Longing, and that's still one of my favorite records of theirs up until now. Unfortunately, at some point last year, if I remember correctly, it was the year after they released For Phantoms, their former drummer, Adrian, passed away. And that was a very tragic loss. I remember when I read the news, I was quite upset and went back and listened to their music that night. But they've always been a band I've absolutely loved for a multitude of reasons, beyond the fact that I'm a big fan of Funeral Doom. And I feel like their atmosphere is some of the most bleak in all of Funeral Doom. They're one of the most original in the aspect of they're a two-piece band that just consists of drums and bass. That's it. And to me, that is such an absolutely unique concept. And when you listen to this, to your average person, they would think it's a guitar. The bass work is just absolutely unbelievably well executed. There's so much going on this record, and it's super hard to truly absorb it because it's so massive. This is one 83-minute song, and this isn't one of those songs where it's, hey, we recorded an entire album in multiple sessions. These were all songs originally, but we're going to do something original, and we're going to make each song title the album title, and we'll call it one track, like I know some bands have done. This isn't the case. This isn't a case of just pretentious douchebaggery to be like, we wrote an album that's the length of the average feature-length film. No, this is a monolithic beast that is extremely well constructed and thought out. And the entire thing, while it's focused on one point, it never feels like it's being just dragged out for the sake of being dragged out. It never feels like it's going on for way too long, and it's going beyond the boundaries of what a reasonable album or even song should be. This album stays within the realms of what I feel like is one of the saddest concepts of 2017, period. This album is utterly heartbreaking. And the concept of this album is, as I stated before, the loss of their drummer. Now, this isn't one of those pseudo-sad bullshit sort of albums where it has the pseudo-depressive, wannabe sad, just basic ass emotional chord sort of records that kind of evokes emotion out of you, but you're really hard pressed to feel anything from it. You feel about as soulless as Dennis from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. You just have no feelings. You can't remember what feelings are like. That's what some albums that try to do this shit are. This isn't anything like that. This album is just absolutely devastating in many senses of the word. One of the most impressive things about this is the absolutely beautiful and sad melodies that carry throughout this album. It has almost like a My Dying Bride, Mournful Congregation type of depressive sound, but just even slower. And being huge fans of those two bands, I'm 100% for that. In fact, My Dying Bride is one of my favorite bands of all time. And if you're into Funeral Doom and you don't like Mournful Congregation, what the fuck, dude? And these really sad, beautiful melodies just carry throughout the record slowly. And it really lulls you into this false sense of security that this whole thing is going to be, oh, it's going to be one of those more mellow records. And then out of nowhere, shit gets real, real quick. And when I say that, I don't mean that the tempo speeds up. No, it stays slow. But the obnoxiously heavy bass tone, along with just these huge sounding drums, just kicks you square in the face. And these vocals that just sound otherworldly kick in. The vocals on this album range from deep, massive, monolithic gutturals that just barely penetrate the music and just really almost weave their way into the deep sounding reverb drenched bass and just overall sound of this record. And the way it just sort of weaves in gives it this almost, I want to say, destructive like quality to it, because it just sounds like the earth rumbling beneath your feet. And that is just absolutely powerful. You have some screams that are higher. And you actually have vocals from Adrian, the man that passed away that inspired this record, that he tracked for their last album, For Phantoms. They make an appearance on this record, and I believe that passage is called Words of the Dead, or Words from the Dead. I can't remember which one it is. And that is just absolutely chilling with how it's executed. You have amazing clean vocals on this record. And on top of all that, you have organ. And this isn't the type of organ shit that you heard with like Hex Vessel, or that you've heard with the more psychedelic bands in not just metal, but in rock in general. This is very subtle, and that's the key to the Bell Witch sound, is less is more. And this album is a prime example of how less is more within any sort of realm of metal, in my opinion, and it's specifically Funeral Doom. They managed to fill so much emptiness with using such minimalistic instrumentation. There's no guitar to be found on this record, yet this sounds 10 times more massive than a lot of death metal albums that are coming out. This is just a phenomenal album, and it's a truly a cinematic journey that you need to experience from front to back. The problem is that as well, though. It's a double-edged sword in that aspect, because it's so incredible and it's so massive, and it's one song that is the length of your average feature-length film. It's a little hard to digest if you don't have the time, or if you don't have the attention span. I have the attention span for it, and I usually have the time for it, but it's utterly exhausting approaching this in some aspects as just one single song. And that's where I feel like the vinyl or CD version would actually come in handy. I was streaming this off Google Play for this review, and I really want to get the physical copy of it, not just because I'm a collector of it and I appreciate the music and I want to show my support to the artist and the label that helped make this happen, but I want to experience the album actually interrupted a little bit, because I feel like that could make this album a little less intimidating, so to speak, to go into, just because it's so utterly huge. It's a 2 CD set, 2 LP set. Insane. But other than just that one gripe, which I feel like is a valid gripe, which isn't even really a gripe in a way. It's kind of both, I guess. If you want to rip on me for it, go for it, but that you have to have the time to listen to this. You can't just throw this on in your car and go to work, is what I'm trying to say. You have to listen to this all the way through. But other than that, honestly, this album is utterly phenomenal. And if this isn't on most people's, at the very least, top 10, or even top 20 for that matter, I'll say that. If it's not in your top 20 at the end of the year, should be in the top 10. There's a problem, and if it's not, it's probably because you haven't listened to it, or you just don't like Funeral Doom. If you're a fan of Funeral Doom, This is the album. If you're a fan of Doom and you're a little nervous about Funeral Doom, avoid this because it is so fucking massive and it's so long. But if you are a seasoned veteran to the sound, you're gonna absolutely love this. And since this album's been out for a while, most of you already do love it. For a score, this is getting a 9 out of 10. It is so fucking good, and I'm so glad that this won the polling for what I should review next. And once again, if you guys want to have a say in what I do, link will be down below. I have a bunch of reviews coming because of Patreon, and I'm going to try my best to do a top 20 video at the end of the year. So we'll see what happens. I got a lot of shit on my plate I'm trying to do, so that's about it. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.